I'm not treading new water by saying many characters in fiction are based on characters that are based on characters and so on, until eventually getting to the source. Even Journey to the West, a big inspiration for the character of Goku from Dragon Ball Z, was inspired by the real-life journey of Zhuangzang, a Buddhist monk who traveled from China to countries within the Middle East. While seeing depictions of original sources shift and morph like a game of telephone, I do find today's topic, as well as many others that are closely tied to the original, just as fascinating, especially with how off the rails they can turn out. Welcome to Inspo, the series that delves into the inspirations behind characters from all across fiction. It's next to impossible for any writer to make a fully original character. Nearly everything is inspired by something, be it existing characters in media, mythological beings, or even real-world people and creatures, with today's topic primarily focusing on one source of inspiration that fits two of those categories. Today's topic is a character that needs no introduction, one who shares the same name as his main inspiration. A wielder of many various weapons, a major antagonist within the series he appears in, from a series I'll be able to cover countless times in the future, Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is one of the only characters in the Final Fantasy series to have multiple appearances. Barring characters like Sid, Biggs, and Wedge, seeing as they are different characters with the same name, Gilgamesh has become the most recurring character, being the same guy every time. His role varies every time he appears. He's been a boss, ally, both. He's appeared as a summonable creature alongside Ifrit and Shiva. In Final Fantasy XIII, he apparently started a weapon manufacturer. He's even been playable a handful of times, like in the Dissidia series, the rhythm games, and of course the Final Fantasy kart racer, Chocobo Racing. Wait, he wasn't in Chocobo Racing? Oh, guess most characters in Chocobo Racing are along the lines of Chocobos, Moogles, and Cloud Strife? Wait, the comedic relief character whose canonical reasoning for appearing in most every Final Fantasy game is that he has the power to travel between dimensions and has appeared in the most Final Fantasy games doesn't get an invite to racing with chickens, and, this guy? But Cloud Strife gets a pass. Wait a minute, who the hell was that other guy? A guest star from a 1987 game? Wait, who is this and why is she in the game too? What is Chocobo Racing's roster?
Who are you people?
But yes, as said, Gilgamesh is so prevalent because he has the power to enter rifts in reality that can take him to different dimensions. He appeared in Final Fantasy V as a recurring boss and direct subordinate to the main antagonist X-Death. He was banished to the Rift, a place between worlds where he has primarily resided, jumping through portal after portal in reality to make appearances in several Final Fantasy games after 5, and even some games before 5, appearing in Final Fantasy I Dawn of Souls in a bonus dungeon exclusive to the remake. Across the whole franchise, he's always appeared as a bumbling moron. In Final Fantasy VI, he fights the party after the player bets the legendary sword Excalibur in an arena, and in Final Fantasy XIV, he exists only in the Hildebrand questline, a series of side quests that had no right being as good as they were, but more than that, has always been an extremely powerful being, usually appearing close to the endgame content, having several legendary swords, and even using Zantetsuken, the sword Odin uses to instantly kill enemies, but not really because bosses are immune to insta-kill effects. Alongside Gilgamesh in many of his appearances was a demonic entity named Enkidu, who appears about Alongside Gilgamesh in many of his appearances was a demonic entity named Enkidu, who appears about as often as Gilgamesh, usually at his side, though Enkidu's appearances are usually a bit more varied. Neither one in this dynamic duo is really taken all too seriously, which makes it all the more interesting when you learn more about his inspiration, Gilgamesh, King of Uruk. The Epic of Gilgamesh is one of the earliest written and most hyperbolized stories of the historical king Gilgamesh. While there is nothing definitive that confirms he ever truly existed, some ancient Mesopotamian artifacts have lent credence that he may have existed. The reason people question if he ever truly existed or not is because this epic is truly that, epic. Across various stone tablets, some having been damaged, and some potentially never being found, we hear some absolutely wild stuff about this guy. The story of Gilgamesh opens with him being stated as being two-thirds god and one-third man, and 100% bastard. See, a rule within his kingdom is that whenever a bride was to be wed, he had full right to have the first dance, if you catch my drift. He would also flaunt his superiority by forcing men within his kingdom to perform against him in feats of strength to the point of exhaustion. The People tired of being ruled by this jackass begged the gods for salvation, and thus they created Enkidu, half man, half beast, to rival Gilgamesh. This ends exactly as you'd expect a fight between two extremely masculine men to go. Gilgamesh wins, Enkidu acknowledges his strength. They become brothers after Gilgamesh asks his mom to adopt Enkidu, and proceed to fuck off into a forest to hunt down a demigod. Over 4,000 years later, the purest form of male friendship remains identical. Not long after that, an angry god sends a divine bull to attack Uruk because Gilgamesh friend-zoned her, to which the two gigachads beat it senseless, with Enkidu throwing the literal ass of the bull at the god. Unfortunately, this was the last straw, as the gods later bestow a plague onto Enkidu that takes his life. This torments Gilgamesh, who goes out into the wild trying to find a way to become immortal, traveling the world until he finds a magic plant that may yet grant immortality, only for it to be eaten by a snake while he's bathing. Yeah, as I said, very much hyperbolized. Gilgamesh is the original Rasputin. But going through the story, a fair few similarities can be noticed despite how comical Final Fantasy's Gilgamesh is. Both are grand warriors with a great sense of honor and a bestial companion by the name of Enkidu. Both are well-traveled men, and gods absolutely hate these guys. Though Gilgamesh isn't the only inspiration for Gilgamesh, you may have noticed the stereotypical samurai design he has. Well, that's because his second biggest influence happens to be a legendary warrior monk by the name of Benkei. So compared to the Epic of Gilgamesh, a story from over 4,000 years ago, there's somehow less consistent information on Benkei alive less than 1,000 years ago. Something fairly universal across all accounts is that Benkei bore a resemblance to an Oni. Surprisingly, he wasn't killed for looking different, and joined a monastery. He would travel the land honing his combat prowess. By the age of 17, it's said he was 6 feet and 6 inches tall, which is kinda terrifying, seeing as the only people in Japan that are that tall at that age are JoJo characters. Benkei would eventually leave the monastery and travel Kyoto at night, fighting samurai for their swords. See, he believed they were unworthy, and felt it only fair that if they lost, he got to take their weapons. This was more a flex than anything, as he already had several weapons such as an axe, sword, sickle, and naginata. He was set to take 1,000 swords from 1,000 men, but at sword number 1,000, he challenged a man to a duel upon a great bridge, but lost, as his opponent was Minamoto no Yoshitsune, a legendary warrior. Benkei tried to fight him again, but after losing twice, he decided to cut his losses and just became the guy's right-hand man. Benkei's tale ends with him fighting off an army upon a bridge, taking down over 300 men before he himself was killed. I'll have to remember that for the eventual Guts video. Now, after hearing that, if you know much about Gilgamesh, you might be thinking that old Benkei here might share even more similarities with Gil. Firstly, the weapon collection. Gilgamesh and Benkei had several different weapons in their repertoire. Gilgamesh's final form even had more arms just to hold more weapons. Second, both have shown respect and loyalty to those who had bested them in combat, Benkei becoming a retainer to the only man to defeat him, and Gilgamesh seeing Bartz as a friend in their last encounter. Lastly, and most notably, bridges. Bridges are a focal point for the tale of Benkei. Both of Benkei's most notable fights take place on a bridge. The exact bridge his fight against Yoshitsune takes place is up for debate, but every source is adamant that it's a bridge. Why is that important? Well, the second time the player encounters Gilgamesh in Final Fantasy V is in a location known as Big Bridge, with the musical track that plays during the fight, later becoming Gilgamesh's theme, being Battle at the Big Bridge. Frankly, Gilgamesh is an interesting case, in that I don't feel like he takes more inspiration from Gilgamesh or Benkei. It feels like an equal blend that mashes both these men together. A blend that you'd expect to be a much more serious character, but is nothing more than a lovable goof. One that has been banned from kart racing chickens because, okay, I can understand Cloud Strife, but Squall gets in, Gilgamesh doesn't? Hey, thanks for watching the video. If there's a character you want me to cover, leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll see you next week.